Welcome back. Now, news in detail, we go to US where over 1,200 more people have died from COVID-19 as the toll crossed 102,000. Worldwide, the count has crossed 365,000 with over 5.9 million infections. Further details in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic continues to ravage countries and lives across the world. In Brazil, authorities have reported 1,124 deaths in the last 24 hours and a record number of over 26,000 new cases. The US still remains the hardest hit so far, but has taken an aggressive approach towards the World Health Organization. President Donald Trump says he is terminating the US relationship with the WHO over its handling of COVID-19.
Because they have failed to make the requested and greatly needed reforms, we will be today terminating our relationship with the World Health Organization and redirecting those funds to other worldwide and deserving urgent global public health needs.
Spain has started mass testing its residents in Madrid in a bid to isolate coronavirus cases and stem the spread of the virus. People queued under the sun, holding their identity cards and keeping social distance between each other.
We have started with first test. They are serological test, antibodies test. This way citizens can know if they are negative or positive in relation to the virus. And in their positive, they would know in what stage they are at, if they are still active or if they are immune to the illness.
China has reported 4 new confirmed cases of coronavirus, all brought from outside the country, and no new deaths.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 78 people have died overnight from COVID-19, marking the highest number of single-day fatalities in the country. Health Ministry says nearly 2,500 have tested positive with the disease over the past 24 hours. The ministry said the total number of infection cases has crossed 66,000. It said over 24,000 patients have recovered so far, while 707 remain critical. The ministry said more than 532,000 tests have been conducted so far, with over 12,000 during the last 24 hours. In another news, Indian troops have martyred 2 more youths in southern district of Kulgam in occupied Kashmir. 7 civilians in the valley have been martyred in May so far. The police said civilians were killed during a cordon and search operation in Vanpura area. Local officials said Indian paramilitary troops have sealed all entry and exit points of the area. They said the operation is still underway. The valley has been under Delhi's imposed curfew and communications blackout for the last 300 days. Meanwhile, Pakistan Army says it has shot down another Indian spy drone at Kanzal-1 sector of the line of control. In a tweet, military spokesman said an Indian spy quadcopter violated the country's airspace in Nekron sector. He said the drone intruded 700 meters into the Pakistani territory. Few days back, Pakistan Army shot down a similar drone in Rakh Chikri sector of the LOC. Earlier, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan said India's expansionist policies are becoming a threat to the regional countries. In Afghanistan, High Council of Afghan Reconciliation head Abdullah Abdullah says his team is ready to begin peace talks with the Taliban at any moment. At a press conference, he said ongoing prisoner exchanges and reduced violence had paved the way for a good beginning. The HCAR chairman added that a fresh ceasefire was necessary during talks. He also said the Taliban's 3-day Eid al-Fitr ceasefire had proven crucial to the peace process. Kabul had welcomed the Taliban's offer and accelerated the release of hundreds of Taliban prisoners in response. Earlier, the Taliban said 71 Afghan National Army soldiers had switched sides and joined the group. Kabul has not commented on the development yet. The EU says it will condition its future political and financial support to Afghanistan with protection and promotion of an inclusive democracy. In a statement, the EU Council reaffirmed its commitment to support Afghanistan's peace process. It said the EU will continue to support for a negotiated political settlement leading to lasting peace and reconciliation. The Council called on the warring sides to build trust and confidence, allowing the prompt start of intra-Afghan negotiations. It also urged the Taliban to respect both the spirit and letter of their agreement with the United States signed in Doha. The statement called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire to focus efforts on tackling the COVID-19 pandemic and to save lives on all sides. Moving on to China, which has accused the U.S. of taking the UN hostage over Hong Kong security law and has warned Western nations to stay out of its internal affairs. This came after the U.S. and the U.K. raised Hong Kong's autonomy at the UN Security Council. U.S. Ambassador to the UN Kelly Craft said Washington and London wanted an emergency discussion on the security law. China denounced the move as interference, saying the Hong Kong law is outside the mandate of the Security Council. Russia's envoy Dmitry Polyansky called the discussion a provocation and abuse of the Council. Polyansky argued the UNSC never discusses internal matters of member states. In a related development, the U.S. says it will end preferential treatment for Hong Kong in trade and travel in response to China's new security law in the territory. In a news conference at White House, President Donald Trump said Beijing has broken its word over Hong Kong's autonomy. Trump said China's move in Hong Kong is a tragedy for the entire world. He said the U.S. will impose sanctions on individuals responsible for smothering Hong Kong's autonomy. Trump said he has also directed his administration to begin the process of eliminating policy agreements on the territory. Israeli forces have shot dead a mentally disabled and unarmed Palestinian in East Jerusalem. In a statement, police said the border officers opened fire on a man in Jerusalem's Old City on suspicion of having a gun. It said the Palestinian man was carrying a suspicious object that looked like a pistol and ran away when ordered to stop. The victim's family identified him as Iyad Khairi Halak from Wad al-Juz neighborhood of occupied East Jerusalem. His family said Halak was shot by several bullets and was left on the ground bleeding until he died. The shooting came a day after Israeli forces killed a Palestinian in the occupied West Bank. Turkish security forces have killed 5 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in northern Syria. In a tweet, the National Defense Ministry said the PKK militants attempted to infiltrate the Operation Peace Spring zone. It said the militants tried to disrupt the peace and secure environment of the region. Since 2016, Turkey has launched 4 successful anti-terrorist operations across its border in northern Syria. The PKK militants have killed 40,000 people in its terror 30-year campaign against Turkey. The U.S. has commended Malta's government for seizing over $1 billion worth of counterfeit Libyan currency. The State Department says a Russian state-owned company, joint stock company Goznak, printed the counterfeit currency. In a statement, it said the influx of this counterfeit currency in recent years has worsened Libya's economic challenges. Washington accused Russia of actions that malign and destabilize Libya. It said the U.S. will continue to work with the UN to deter illicit activities that undermine Libya's sovereignty and stability. We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. The UN has extended for another year the arms embargo on South Sudan put into place in 2015. It has also extended travel ban and financial sanctions on targeted individuals. The resolution also sets a midterm review by December 15th and expresses the Council's readiness to consider adjusting the sanctions. Voting 12-0 on the US drafted resolution, the UNSC welcomed encouraging developments in South Sudan's peace process, but it also expressed deep concern at continued fighting and condemned violations of the peace deal and cessation of hostilities agreement. Russia, China, and South Africa abstained from voting, arguing that sanctions are not conducive to promoting the peace process. The civil war has killed nearly 400,000 people and displaced millions. Thousands of internally displaced persons have been left without shelter after a fire swept through their camp in Nigeria's northeastern city of Maiduguri. In a statement, the UN Refugee Agency said the fire broke out on the eve of Eid al-Fitr at the makeshift camp that hosts about 40,000 IDPs. It said the fire that began after sparks from a cooking blaze razed houses to the ground and damaged other facilities. UNHCR said they are working with all humanitarian partners to assist the refugees who lost all their belongings. It said 2.5 million people are displaced across the Lake Chad region, including some 1.8 million inside Nigeria and the rest in Cameroon and Chad. The statement said, with the ongoing violence, thousands of people have to run for their lives each day. In the U.S., protests against the killing of a black American have turned violent across the country. Thousands of people have taken to the streets in Atlanta, New York, Washington, and other cities, smashing windows and setting police vehicles ablaze. In New York City, clashes broke out between police and protesters, resulting in the arrest of 12 people. Hundreds of people also defied a curfew in Minneapolis by rallying in the city's downtown for the fourth day over George Floyd's custodial death. Police deployed tear gas to disperse crowds in downtown Atlanta as the city's mayor pleaded protesters to go home. In Washington, D.C., a protest outside the White House briefly caused the building to be placed on lockdown. Angry demonstrators across the country chant, "I can't breathe," invoking the last words of Floyd. Earlier, a prosecutor announced the former Minneapolis police officer responsible for the death of Floyd has been arrested and charged with murder. Malaysia's ex-Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad and 4 other former members have vowed to challenge their removal from the Bersatu party. Mahathir, along with his son and 3 other senior members, were expelled from the party in a power struggle with his successor. In a joint statement, the former premier said the unilateral action by Bersatu's president is due to his own fears in facing party elections. He said the party president is anxious over his unsafe position as the most unstable prime minister in the history of the country. Mahathir said he still has the majority support of legislators and has called for a no-confidence vote against Muhyiddin Yassin. The expelled members said they may take legal action to challenge their termination. The party has been split into 2 camps since intense political wrangling led Mahathir to resign as Prime Minister in February. Russia says the U.S. has damaged international law on cooperation by withdrawing from the World Health Organization. In a press briefing, Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said the world needs to consolidate its efforts to fight the COVID-19 outbreak. Zakharova said the sad picture that emerged in the U.S. health system leaves Washington without an avenue to talk about leadership in this field. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump cancelled America's WHO membership, accusing it of mishandling the pandemic. A 37-year-old Thai street artist is splashing walls across Bangkok with murals depicting the fight against coronavirus. Let's find out more in this report.
As the world recuperates from the novel coronavirus pandemic, an artist in Thailand has come up with a unique way of keeping the virus at bay. He paints murals on the walls of Bangkok. Going by the pseudonym Newborn, which means restless hands in Thai, the 37-year-old signature designs feature what he refers to as winged creatures. They resemble birds dressed as health workers fighting against an ominous-looking green coronavirus.
I want to play my part in reminding people about the situation and recording the history in which we all helped each other by staying home to stop the spread of the virus.
Newborn said he preferred the canvas of the streets rather than a formal art gallery to exhibit his work so that it remains more accessible to the public.
On the basis of our society, there is a huge gap between art and the ordinary people. Thais are not into art. They don't really understand it. Therefore, I put artwork on the streets at places where people sitting in cars will be able to see it driving by, where they don't have to go to an art exhibition or a gallery to see the art.
Newborn prefers painting during the hours of night. Most of his spray paint murals take around 2 hours to finish. Although the artist says he is not popular in Thailand, his artwork has been displayed abroad in countries like Japan, the US, Germany, and most recently Palestine.
Thousands of Chilean families hard hit by the economic effects of coronavirus pandemic received food boxes. Details in this report.
The World Health Organization has declared Latin America a new epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. Regional governments are struggling with how to keep their populations in lockdown with few financial resources and weak social systems. Protest in Chile restarted this week with skirmishes between police and people denouncing the highest job losses in a decade. Council workers backed by soldiers began handing out 2.5 million food parcels in Santiago.
These boxes arrived to us yesterday at the last minute, and we're articulating with the municipal team to also get here, where there is a middle class which is also suffering the impact of the crisis, a health crisis that is turning into an economic crisis.
Local media says the food boxes will reach 70% of the country's most vulnerable population.
We hope this will be resolved soon. We all have to cooperate, all the families, the whole country, everybody. If we don't take the right measures, we're going to stay infected. So I thank them and welcome the resources they are giving us.
The government has announced a rescue package equivalent to more than 5% of GDP, but opposition politicians and protest leaders says it is insufficient.
In the Czech Republic, the National Museum is opening an exhibition of face masks worn to protect against COVID-19. It aims to signal that one day the coronavirus will be history. More in this report.
The Czech government was one of the first to make it compulsory to wear a mask outside the home. Although opinions differ on what kind of difference masks have made, when the crisis began, industrially made masks were in short supply, which prompted a nationwide effort to make them at home. Now they are being displayed at the National Museum.
It makes sense for sure because it shows the art and creativity of our people. It was exciting when the masks were not available all around the world, and our nation had made them in 3 weeks. Soon everyone had his own masks, even funny, nice, and artistically well made.
Among those on display is a mask with a map of the Prague metro made by an autistic teenager, and one created to raise awareness about ovarian cancer by a non-profit organization.
Some of the masks also feature love stories, like this mask from the wearing shirt of someone's husband. The lady was unable to throw it away until the coronavirus crisis, when she cut it and sewed masks for her husband.
The exhibition opens today, just as the government relaxes its mask policy. People will no longer have to wear them outdoors, but must still do so on public transport and in public buildings, including the museum.
India's economic growth has slumped to its lowest level at 3.1% in the first quarter. Fresh data suggested the country's economy may be heading for a major shock in the June quarter. As per the data released by India's Statistics Department, the country's GDP grew only 4.2% against 6.1% of 2019. The first quarter included 1 week of lockdown in March that severely dented the manufacturing activity. India's 8 infrastructure sectors shrank by a record 38% in April. The data reveals the country's merchandise exports contracted by 60% in April. Analysts forecast that India's economy will face its worst recession in 40 years, contracting by at least 5% this fiscal year. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.in.